Welcome back. You're watching Vote 22 here on UTV as we bring you the latest on what could be an historic election in Northern Ireland. So just coming up to 10 past 12, let's get a quick update on the latest. Having not lost a seat yet, Sinn Féin are doing everything needed to emerge as the largest party in the Assembly. So far, 51 of the 90 seats have been filled after counting resumed this morning. The DUP looks set to remain the largest unionist party, but as the vote splits, senior figures have called for a joining of forces. Meanwhile, the alliance surge continues, but already the SDLP has suffered some major casualties, with the party's only minister, Nicola Mallon, under serious pressure to keep her seat. And with day two of the counting now underway, we are with you to talk through the results as they are coming. We'll also be talking to our reporters across the scene, but we've got Alison Morris and Alex Kane with us, joining David and Tracy. So what kind of a night did you have?
Well, I was at the count until Matthew O'Toole was elected, which I think was about 12:30 last night. And then I was back first thing this morning to watch Paula Bradshaw and Kate Nicholl go over the line in South Belfast. So that's a wrap in South Belfast, but we're still waiting on the rest of the seats being declared. It is an incredibly slow count. I mean, I know these things, sometimes we complain about how long they take, but we had a flurry of activity when a lot of the sort of first seats were filled. And then after that, things went very quiet. So there are a lot of reporters running on very strong coffee at this point in time.
And is one of them the gentleman sitting to your left? Alex Kane?
I went home, ate half a box of biscuits, went to bed, rolled out, put a tie on, and here I am back in the studio again.
Yeah. Much to say?
Well, there's lots to say. But it's been an odd election in many ways. Yeah. It's more exciting than I expected it to be, but when all the dust is settled and all the results are in, it'll be the same old dynamics we're dealing with.
Yes, but then somebody somewhere is going to have to, if not blink, try and move forward.
I think, as I said yesterday, I think something will happen. I think the DUP and UUP, their joint interests are in keeping the Assembly going because they know that without devolution they're going to have a hybrid of joint rule, direct rule. It's not going to be good for unionism. So I think they will prioritise finding that way, but they have to do it slowly.
That might be too slow for Sinn Féin, because what will Sinn Féin do with its mandate here?
Well, they have a huge mandate, as do the Alliance, and both of those parties are in favour of maybe some tweaks to the protocol, but they're certainly not in favour of getting rid of it or any major reform of it. So then what sort of, when the DUP then have to go to Westminster and have to say, well, we're not going back in until there's changes made to the protocol, but yet then Westminster have to look and say, well, the majority of people have voted in favour of retaining the protocol in its form. So if they're seen to bow down to the DUP at the expense of the majority of the electorate in Northern Ireland, that's not going to go down too well. But at the same time, that's the corner that Jeffrey Donaldson has backed himself into. Unless there's movement, he's not going back in.
And what must he be thinking, what must he be contemplating today in light of the results?
I think how he brings everything together, Paul, to keep the Assembly going without frightening, because he has to bear in mind that Jim Allister may not be coming back with someone, but he's still got 60,000 votes there. There are still the people who organised the rallies. There's that street support. He has to bear all that in mind. But he also, the other thing he has to do, when he goes to see the Prime Minister, to talk about the protocol, he has to reassure the Prime Minister that even if they give them something on the protocol, that when it comes to appointing a Deputy First Minister, when it comes to the stuff about the restoring the active union and so on, because Johnson doesn't want to be told, look, I can do something, I can move this for you, but you're still telling me you won't do the following things. So he will want clarity from Jeffrey Donaldson that if he can give him enough to sell, that Jeffrey will sell it.
Thank you very much indeed. Now we're going to join Judith Hill in Belfast, who's able to bring us up to date with what's going on at the counts for South Down and South and East Belfast. Hi, Judith.
Hey Paul, well we have a full swathe of MLAs here in South Belfast, and there's been much emotion here in Titanic Belfast at the count here this morning. Jubilation for Alliance, many smiles across the board. They ran those two candidates in South. Some in the party were edgy about that. They had no reason to be. Both Paula Bradshaw and Kate Nicholl got in, and real emotion for the popular Belfast mayor, who's 37 weeks pregnant and has campaigned hard to the end. end. She took the final seat in this constituency of the Green Party leader, Claire Bailey, her hard-won seat from the last election, but she just couldn't compete with the Alliance surge in the end. A motion too for Edwin Poots, standing in this constituency for the first time. He dedicated the win to his friend Christopher Stolford, and indeed many of the candidates here paying tribute to the popular Deputy Speaker in their acceptance speeches. I should say as well, the SDLP's Matthew O'Toole took the other seat in this constituency, and he really talked about this being a humbling and difficult election for his party. In East Belfast then, no real movement, still those two seats filled, Naomi Long and Joanne Bunting, and the story really in this constituency is the neck and neck race and that profile in East between the split between Alliance and DUP. We're expecting the second Alliance and DUP candidates to get across the line in a couple of stages hopefully, and then the Ulster Unionist Party's Andy Allen is on course to get that final seat, leaving this constituency at status quo. Taking a quick look then at South Down as well, slow progress here. The two Sinn Féin candidates across the line, Sinead Ennis topping the poll spectacularly yesterday. Alliance's Patrick Brown polling strongly as well, the SDLP looking healthy, but one to watch here is Diane Forsyth. I spoke to her earlier. She says she's hoping to get in at the later stages. She has of course faced a very pressurised campaign, that online abuse, criticism from Jim Wells. She says she has remained steadfast throughout, and she says one of the reasons she's hoping to get an outcome before too long is that she's juggling childcare today. So that's really the makeup so far. Quite a few seats still to come here in South Down and East. And I should say that the DUP leader Jeffrey Donaldson has just arrived here at the Count Centre. Obviously a flurry of activity in DUP ranks, but that is the very latest here at Titanic.
Thank you very much indeed. We're off now again to Magherafelt, where we can join Sarah O'Kane, who's been keeping an eye on East Londonderry, West Tyrone, Fermanagh, South Tyrone. What's the latest, Sarah?
Hi Paul, well yes, I've taken on another constituency today and I'm going to jump right on to East Londonderry because literally within the last few moments we have had a candidate elected. That is the DUP's Alan Robinson, keeping it in the family. He's taking over from his father, that well-known politician George Robinson. Now we have another DUP candidate already elected in East Londonderry, but that's it so far. It is very slow. All eyes will be on, of course, that high-profile Claire Sugden, former Justice Minister. Now, apparently she is quietly optimistic, just not there yet. And, of course, we are looking at the SDLP's Cara Hunter. She was co-opted in to take over from John Dallett, who sadly passed away. And really, she will be hoping to retain that seat in his honour. Now, if we jump over to Fermanagh, South Tyrone, and indeed West Tyrone, I can tell you there is going to be no change in the party lineup there. So for Fermanagh South Tyrone, we have 3 DUP, 1 UUP and 1 DUP. We only have one candidate elected so far, that was Gemma Dolan from Sinn Féin topping the poll there. Sinn Féin are set to retain those 3 seats. But the most interesting story coming out of Fermanagh South Tyrone is, of course, that comeback into politics by Tom Elliott, former Ulster Unionist leader, former MP. Now, he is set to take that Ulster Unionist seat in the constituency, but of course it was at the expense of the sitting MLA, and that was Rosemary Barton. Some raised their eyebrows as to really why the UUP would put up 2, very well-known people in that area. I asked both, was it a mistake? They both say no. They actually said they had hoped to perhaps take some of that support from Arlene Foster, who of course is not standing, and bring it across, but it hasn't worked. Now, Rosemary did assure me that she won't fall out with Tom Elliott. Of course, they work together in the same office, and she did say, look, it's not going to be awkward. She's just looking to the future now. And interestingly as well, Tom Elliott is still ahead of Arlene Foster's replacement. That's Deborah Erskine. Of course, you remember Arlene quit politics last year after being ousted as DUP leader and then stepping aside as MLA. Now, I had a wee walk in with Deborah this morning, both probably a wee bit wary coming back here, and she was saying, look, it's her first election. She is optimistic, and she really has that support from Arlene Foster as well. West Tyrone, no change there. It's going to be 3 Sinn Féin.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you very much indeed. Just finish off what you were saying there about West Tyrone, very briefly, quickly.
Well, really quickly to sum it up, this time yesterday it was all about Stephen Donnelly from Alliance potentially getting that seat, but today he has been eliminated. So again, no change to the status quo. We're looking at 3 Sinn Féin, 1 SDLP and 1 DUP. I have to really quickly say though, in both constituency, the TUV vote is up.
Thank you very much indeed, Sarah O'Kane. We were talking there about Rosemary Barton. I mean, she must feel very, very wounded this morning, David.
Yeah, and also it's bad for the Ulster Unionist. The Ulster Unionist Party will have no women in its parliamentary ranks. That'll be the first time since 2007 that has happened. So again, for Doug Beattie's, the image he tries to put out there about the Ulster Unionist Party.
You're very good at analysing things, and I'm just wondering I mean, the Ulster Unionists seem to have got it so wrong in so many constituencies where they put up 2 candidates where there really was only 1 quota. Yeah. What were they thinking?
Well, I asked myself that many times during the campaign. In East Belfast, they were running to 1.8 quota.
Yes,
even in North Antrim, though, where they were running Robin Swan, he took, I think, around about 90% of Ulster Unionist votes. That's unheard of. That is so I think what they've done is they've tried to obviously up the number of women they had, because there's a lot of commentary in 2017 about the lack of women they've ran. But however, if you look at many groups who actually advocate for these things, they look at winnable seats. They look at women in winnable seats. It's not enough just to say, oh, well, we've got all these women here. But if you're running them in seats that they're not going to win in, it's not really advancing anything forward.
Can I just, in terms of women, female candidates, you're talking about Diane Forsyth and South Down. Diane Forsyth has been slaughtered. Talk about a dirty campaign being run against a female candidate. And for the last 2 days, I have watched her stand in that count with her head held high and with dignity. Such a lovely, lovely woman, such a dedicated woman. And for those who tried to discredit her and what they have done on her in the run-up to this election should be ashamed of themselves. So I really do hope that she gets elected, because it'll be good for democracy to see that you can't run a dirty tricks campaign against a candidate like that and force them out. I think it was, when we talk about trying to encourage women into politics, we'll look at what happened to Diane Forsyth and say, if you were a young woman, would you want to enter into politics and enter into that dirty world?
Yeah, and just to comment on that, if you look at some of the best performers in the DUP, it is Diane Forsyth, Pam Cameron, Joanne Bunting, Michelle McIlveen. They've actually polled better, and you've seen less swings away from the DUP in those constituencies than the Northern Ireland average. So again, the story of women in the DUP being the top performers will be one.
You have some understanding for the Ulster Unionists. You worked for them once upon a time, Alex.
Don't keep reminding me.
Oh, no, I'm not rubbing salt in wounds here. I'm just sort of trying to give the context to the question. And it's one that we have asked many times over the last 24 hours. And it is, why would the Ulster Unionist Party be trying to fish in a very, very small pool for 2 seats when there is actually only 1?
Because sometimes you need the leader, instead of saying, yes, you're good, and we'll run you, to say no, to sit down with the facts and the figures, the hard statistics, and say, you're 2 good candidates here, only 1 of you can win, and we're not going to risk it. I'd rather come back with 18 than go down to 8 or 9. And that takes leadership. It takes people at the centre who run the policy, who run the strategy, to say, don't do this, leader, do not do it. That wasn't coming. He wasn't told that, because I remember weeks ago when discussing with some party members in constituency, why are you running this? And their answer, Paul, is, oh, we've been told by headquarters.
You need a number cruncher as well. You need like a nerd. If only we knew one who was
David, yes.
who could have helped them with that. Who could have helped them with the statistics.
Don't try and get me lumped in the Ulster Unionist Party. I'm not going to.
But I think it also requires a level of bravery and courage, because the DUP did do that.
Yes.
With Diane Forsyth, yes. and as a result, look at all the blowback. So it has to be a decision. I agree with you. There needs leadership. You need to make a decision, and then once you've made your decision, you have to hold firm.
Yeah.
Right, Tracy, thank you very much indeed. I'm being told that we can have a look now at some of the completed counts. So we're starting with Lagan Valley, and there you have Jeffrey Donaldson, Robbie Butler, Saoirse Eastwood, Paul Given, and David Honeyford returned there for the Lagan Valley constituency. So let's move on now to South Antrim, I believe is coming our way next. And we have that completed count. So Declan Kearney, John Blair, Steve Aiken, Pam Cameron and Trevor Clark are elected there. To East Antrim, and we have John Stewart of the Ulster Unionists elected, Gordon Lyons and David Hilditch of the DUP, Stuart Dixon and Danny Donnelly of Alliance, both elected. So we're off to South Belfast next. It's coming our way, and that's a completed count. So we've got Deirdre Hargey, Edwin Poots, Matthew O'Toole, Paula Bradshaw and Kate Nicholl there, elected in Belfast South. And Newry and Armagh is coming our way now, and we've got Conor Murphy, Cathal Boylan, Justin McNulty, Liz Kimmins and Willie Irwin from the DUP all returned for Newry and Armagh. So, what is likely to happen next week, David McCann, in light of the results?
I don't even know what's likely to happen in the next 7 minutes. Never mind the next 7 days. Look, I think
welcome to my world.
I think ultimately the parties are all going to want to sit back and take stock and find out where they are. You know, the parties with the hardest questions are the SDLP and the Ulster Unionists. You know, Colin meets with Doug Beattie. Do they sit back and how they do and where do they go next? You know, the SDLP may well be looking for a new deputy leader, also a new assembly group leader, also a new infrastructure minister as well if Nicola Mallon goes down. So Colin Eastwood will have some decisions to make there. Doug Beattie again, he's going to have to figure out what kind of is going right for them in places like Foyle, but what's gone wrong everywhere else. They're going to want to look at that. So those are the parties with the two hardest questions. Obviously, the DUP have bled votes. Great candidate strategy, and that has saved them. Running for your candidates, by my estimation, has saved between 3 and 5 DUP seats. If they ran more in some constituencies, they would be down closer to 21 seats now. So they're going to want to figure out how they get some of those votes back too. And then obviously Sinn Féin, it's just planning the celebration party really, and how they go forward, because they have just confounded all expectations. We were all thinking 24 seats would be a good day for Michelle O'Neill, and they've just taken that.
And what must Dublin and London at this stage be contemplating?
Well, I would say there'll be a lot of raised eyebrows, a certain degree of concern about it all, because look, what you're looking at is another, I was going to say a few weeks, few months, who knows, crisis continuing in Stormont. So what interventions can they make will be the question they'll be asking. I think in terms of what happens next week, well, I mean, Sinn Féin are going to be pushing for a party leaders meeting as soon as possible. They will want to bottom out exactly what are the DUP going to do. I think the party leaders for the DUP have to get together. Interesting that Gregory Campbell is saying we're going to get together very early next week. They're going to have to make decisions. The clock is ticking for Sir Geoffrey Donaldson as to whether or not he actually goes into Stormont or not. They have 8 days to decide whether or not he stays in Westminster or stays in Stormont. Now, you know,
why would he decide to remain in Westminster after winning a seat in Lagan Valley?
You could nearly write the script, couldn't you? You know, the protocol is what we need to get sorted out. I need to be in Westminster to make those arguments. And yes, certainly a pragmatist would say it makes absolutely no sense for the DP leader to come back to Stormont now, but what kind of message does that send to the Unionist electorate that they put him in with a vote of over 12,000 votes? I mean, that is getting into Westminster result territory, and then he doesn't come back.
Right, we're now able to talk live to John O'Dowd, who has been returned successfully in the constituency of Upper Bann. Good afternoon to you, Mr. O'Dowd. It's clearly party time for Sinn Féin.
Well, it's work time. There's no time to be partying at this stage. We need to get back into the Assembly and the Executive on Monday. There are families and workers this weekend who are deciding how they're going to eat and how they're going to heat their homes. That's the reality of many people's lives across the north. So politicians need to get their selves into action. The Executive and the Assembly needs to be working and functioning, and we need to get money out the door for the cost of living crisis, and we need to start putting £1 billion of investment into our health service.
Right, well, given what you've just been saying there, how patient will you be with the DUP? How much time will you give them? How long will you wait for them to come and join you?
Well, the DUP have had 25 years to make up their minds around power sharing, so I think that's sufficient time. They need to understand that the only way forward for this society is under the Good Friday Agreement and working together. And they need to respect the democratic outcome of the elections. So it's not a case of how much time I'm prepared to give them or the party's prepared to give them. Time has ran out for many families and they're struggling. Time has ran out for our health service. So we need to simply do what people do after an election. Get your executive, your government into place and start delivering the promises you made over that election. The DUP have a 5-point plan.
Yeah.
How are they going to deliver that from the sidelines?
Well, it begs the question, if there is no resolution to the protocol in the short term and the DUP does not return to Stormont, what happens then?
Well, this idea of a resolution to the protocol, I don't exactly know what that means. Because in my constituency, they're building factories, they're building warehouses, jobs are being created, prosperity is being created. So we have to, that's perhaps a discussion for another day. But the DUP, there needs to be a focus placed on the DUP. Jeffrey Donaldson and his colleagues went to the electorate with a 5-point plan saying, elect us and we will do this for you. Now Jeffrey Donaldson is telling his electorate that he may not even take up the mandate he has been given. I think that sends an awful message out. Not only to the unionist elected, but also to the broader elected, because in many people's eyes, this isn't about the protocol. This is about the DUP refusing to share power with their nationalist and Republican neighbours. And those days should be over. Nationalists and Republicans can apply for any job in this society. That includes the First Minister. Michelle O'Neill is most likely to qualify for the role as First Minister, and the DUP should respect that.
John O'Dowd, thank you very much indeed for your updated analysis there. Alison Morris, it's a very conciliatory John O'Dowd there in many ways, is it not?
Yeah, I think, and Jeffrey Donaldson's just arrived in Belfast there, I think, you know, to celebrate Red Win Poots, and the questions will have to be asked. Is he going to take that seat? Is he going to stay in Westminster? As Tracy said, you can see that he's going to say, well, we need to work on the protocol. I can do that best from over here. And
so
whether,
what was the point?
Yeah, and whether,
in Lagan Valley?
because I think that he thought that that was the best chance of increasing or retaining those DUP votes and retaining those to show that he was going to come back and fight in Stormont. But I mean, it hasn't been a great election. It hasn't been as bad an election as was predicted for them by any means. It could have been a hell of a lot worse. And while John O'Dowd might not be much of a partier, I know the Sinn Féin workers who were knocking doors will definitely be partying tonight, because when they come into the count yesterday, you could not have angered them. You really couldn't have.
Yeah, we've got images of Jeffrey Donaldson arriving at one of the counts. Well, it's Belfast there. You can see Edwin Poots. They're standing, holding hands together. Alex Kane, what will be going through his mind today in light of what's being said about him potentially staying at Westminster?
Well, I have to say, I think that if he was to go, it would be catastrophically stupid if, having got the 12,000 votes, if having built the whole campaign about coming back to Stormont and bringing stability and trying to find a way through and pushing this 5-point plan for weeks on end, if he was to go, oh, I'm going to stay in Westminster, it's a much better option. Because he has to remember what happened to Arlene Foster. Arlene Foster power drifted, the Assembly wasn't working, power drifted from her to the Westminster team. And if he finds himself in Stormont, which isn't working, maybe that's his worry, Paul. Maybe he thinks that it'll be someone else taking over his role and the Westminster team will take control of everything.
But that's going to lead to another schism within the DUP.
Look, it's like so many things. We've asked week after week, we've asked, are you going to take First Minister? Are you going to take a seat? And so we've had no clarity. I said to you yesterday, he may not be able to answer these questions today or tonight. He will have to answer them on Saturday. Because Tracy's right, this 8-day thing, he can't go on playing this right the very last. But again, I'm going to make the point again because I think it's an important one. If he were to do that, I think it would be catastrophically stupid for him and for his party, and it would annoy the hell of a lot of people.
Alex and Alison, thank you both very much indeed. And to Tracy and David, nobody's going away just yet. We're taking a short break and we will return.